Hi, I'm Jesse Hirsch, and welcome to MetaViews. Recorded live in front of an automated audience. And today, I think we're in for a treat, partly because of our topic, quitting social media, but also our guest, who I can firmly say is the first neighbor, metaphorically, that I've been able to have on the show. Susan, I say neighbor only because the guest I just recorded with shortly before you was in Madrid. Geographically speaking, even though you're not technically my neighbor, we live in the same town. So by internet means we are technically neighbors. And as you may know, I like to start every episode of MetaViews by talking about the news. Partly because MetaViews publishes a daily newsletter on the future of authority. And today we were talking about the presidential pardons that Trump just issued and kind of the significance of that, looking at authority and kind of wondering about the puzzle of why he would pardon such kind of heinous threats to the Democratic apparatus. But our real purpose of the news segment, Susan, is to give our guest a chance to share some news. This could be personal news, this could be local news, this could be world news. The goal on an intuitive level is to sort of ask, what have you been thinking about? What are you looking at? What's had your attention? In the sense of what do you think our audience should be paying attention to in the context of the news and current affairs?
Well, I've been preoccupied this week with the declaration by Mark Carney to run for the leadership of the Liberal Party, and I think that anyone's a better option than the other option.
Yes.
I don't want to name any names, but I think you know who I'm talking about.
I call him PP, right?
Yeah,
because
PP,
it's both insulting, but you're not reinforcing his kind of name brand.
Yeah, the guy that speaks in slogans.
And who I don't mind saying just comes across as mean, right?
Mean. In fact, I just wrote that on my Facebook page. Somebody said something to me. He's going to be our next PM, and I said, yeah. He's hateful.
Yes.
He's hateful. He's manipulative, and he's mean.
Yeah, and I've heard some. So we had Rick Salutin on the show just a couple of days ago, and he was saying the same thing as you. He felt that federal politics is exciting again. That it feels like we're coming to a point where nothing's certain, and we might even have policy debates. But at the same time,
God forbid.
Exactly. Let's not get our hopes up, though. I suspect we could be disappointed. But he wanted to almost compare PP with Brian Mulroney. And where I feel that falls a little short is at least Brian Mulroney, you could sort of say that he had the best interests of the country. You might have disagreed with his policies, but he kind of liked people. Versus PP just comes across as mean and hateful. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mulroney had gravitas.
Yeah.
No, he had presence. He had that deep voice, that voice. And I was just looking at somebody at who was it? Somebody put up a comparison of disapproval ratings, because you know how important that is, and Trudeau's was, I think his approval was something like, I don't know, 20 something percent, and then it was compared to Harper, which at the end of his thing was around, I don't know, whatever it was. But Mulroney's was 12.
Yeah.
12% approval. And I mean, you can't get much worse than that. And that's headed towards zero now.
And not to get too sidetracked in history, but people put a lot of blame or guilt on Kim Campbell for the electoral
Yeah,
result. But Mulroney, it was his legacy that the election was kind of on. She unfortunately didn't get enough chance to govern and develop her own legacy. So she was kind of running under the kind of Mulroney shadow. And she gets
yeah,
the blame, and people like Alan Gregg get the blame for that electoral devastation. When, to your point, I think it was a vote against Mulroney. People are like, we want something new. We want something fresh.
yeah. Which is, interesting because we kind of find ourselves in a very similar situation, isn't it? He left without, there wasn't much time for getting to know the candidate. There wasn't enough time for her to really get her hands into the, her fingers into the dirt. And, but we're kind of in the same place.
Yeah.
Trudeau, in my view, should have resigned months ago. And now we've got this race on our hands. I'm, like I said, I'm pro Carney. I think he's the best one for the job. I don't think anyone else, any of the other candidates, can beat PP. Don't have a chance. I mean, maybe we can get a minority. We can get him in a minority position. That would be the target. I would think from my standpoint. I mean, if the Liberals won again, and I'm not even a Liberal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. You're just anti-PP.
Exactly.
Yeah, no kidding. And to your point, had Trudeau resigned, months, if not a year earlier, Chrystia Freeland might have had a chance to differentiate herself, and she does not now. Right? She like Kim Campbell, she would run under Trudeau's shadow, and it would give her no chance. Although paradoxically, because I also really like that Mark Carney is in the race. I think he completely changes the discourse and the debate. But where PP, I think, is very vulnerable is the foreign interference part. This is this scandal, right, with India and this idea that PP hasn't got national security clearance.
Yeah, I'm not getting that. Can you explain that to me?
It doesn't have a lot of substance. But the argument is that the Conservative Party, both from India and China, has benefited from external interference, specifically targeting the diasporas in Canada and trying to skew them towards conservatives. And again, I think they're trying to embellish, like Canada is a country of diasporas. And as a result, we are naturally going to have inter-border disputes, dialogues, discourse.
Yeah.
But here's the caveat, and I'm bringing this more as a joke than an actual, implication. Okay. I think Mark Carney is the benefit of foreign interference in the form of Jon Stewart. Because Jon Stewart basically announced Mark Carney's campaign. There's no one better you could have had to announce it and promote it. And, I mean, the Tories aren't smart enough to make this argument, but you could say that it's a little bit of foreign interference the way that Trump is, trying to interfere in our domestic politics.
I thought that was a real coup.
It was brilliant. And I think it was Jon Stewart as much as it was the Carney campaign. I think Stewart is a genuine fan. And he just decided, I would love to have Mark Carney on the global stage.
He's brilliant. He's brilliant, that Jon Stewart. He is so well-read and well-informed and clever and, incisive. He's witty. He's a great actor. Like his comedic timing is off the charts.
I think as a sign of the tragedy of our society is that he would never consider political office versus he would win. He would win. He would be a senator, no problem. Right. And as a senator, wow, the impact that he would have on the spectacle and showbiz side of politics. Right. So now we're still on the news. So I have to segue to our second segment just so that we keep the show going. But our second segment called WTF, or What's the Future, kind of reinforces that we are a future-centric podcast. We really, try to keep our eyes on the horizon. And so this is where we ask our guest, when you look to the future, it could be short-term future, could be long-term future, what do you see? What is it that you think our audience needs to be looking at or paying attention to when again, looking at the event horizon?
It's funny because had you asked me that question 2 weeks ago, I probably would have had a completely different answer. But I've been thinking. We talked or mentioned, or you mentioned, getting off social media. I've been on Facebook since pretty much day one, and one of my pages, amazingwomenrock.com. I had a website. I had the page, right? And that page was one of the first 10,000 business pages on Facebook. I don't know how many pages there are now, but it's got to be millions. And so I've been there from the start. And I was on Twitter. I was, Reddit wasn't there. Instagram wasn't there. What are some of the other ones? Doesn't matter. None of them were there. It was Facebook and later Twitter.
I was going to say, remember when Facebook, it was the status always had an is. So it'd be Susan is. And then you'd have to craft your statement based on the word is. And then they removed the is. But I looked back at one time at my archive and I kept wondering, wait, well, there's a word missing here. And it's because the original Facebook status was like, Jesse is. And then you'd write whatever the is was.
Too funny. Anyway, I've gone through that whole thing, and I've gone through frustrations with Facebook running a page like from the very start, and there's less and less. The users have less and less control, and Facebook has obviously more and more, and it's becoming a bit OTT. It's you can't. So now on my page, all of a sudden, my own posts. I have a new page now. I've had maybe 6 altogether, and they're removing my posts from my own page, telling me it's spam.
I mean, that's got to be a false positive. That's got to be the algorithm just being stupid, right?
I don't know.
With Facebook, the extent to which they've automated stupidity on multiple levels, one can never underestimate. Because I've walked away. I still have my Facebook, but I've often walked away from it for years for the exact reason that you're describing. Because it feels like a moving target, right?
Yes.
Like the rules are constantly changing.
Exactly. So the other day I went to Messenger. Somebody sent me a photo, and I saw it on my phone first, and then because I don't like to work on my phone, it's too small, and so I use my laptop more. And I went to my laptop to look at the photo, but I couldn't see it anymore because it was a one view only. One view only. And it said right there on the thing, you can only look at this photo. And so now you have the option. If you're sending a photo to somebody, you have the option of having them view it only once. And then it's deleted. It's gone forever.
It's not deleted, though. That's the paradox. That
No,
goes
it's
to your
somewhere.
point. Yeah, that goes to your point of how the user has less control. They give you the illusion that the other user only gets to see it once, but Facebook has it forever.
Yeah.
Right? And that is a bit of a paradox.
In some virtual vault somewhere.
Yeah. But to bring us back to where we started, this ostensibly is about the future. So are you entertaining a future without Facebook? Has the frustration reached that point?
It kind of is. I'm thinking, so I'm a writer. So, I want to keep writing. And unlike some people, unlike some artists, it's important for me for my work to be seen. It's important for my words to be read. And I'm considering now going to Substack as an option, but I haven't had much experience with Substack. I see a lot of people using it. I have my own blog. so it's how to, like, I used to use, and I still do use Facebook to drive people to my blog. And whether Substack will enable me to do that or not, and then you have to start all over again in building your audience, and so I don't know. Are you on Substack?
I mean, give me a pause before we get to
Facebook page. That's my website.
That's the website.
Yeah.
And I will answer your Substack question, but let me just, briefly bring up your website, because I was absolutely, I don't want to say overwhelmed, but that is correct. I was blown away. I was impressed when I looked at the site map and just how many amazing women you've got on the site. It was really impressive. So this is hey, everybody, go check out amazingwomenrock.com. Because Susan, over the years, has really built a phenomenal resource that is well worth going down the rabbit hole and checking out some of the stuff that's been put up there.
Yeah.
But sorry, go ahead.
So that site has over 2,000 pages, all of it written by me.
Yeah, that is again impressive, especially to your point where I have both been curious and I would say careless over the last couple of decades on the internet. I often just start something new. So I'm always there's all these starts. Exactly, right? There is a little bit of that. I'm definitely an ADHD autistic person. But I wish that some of the projects I'd started in the 90s had kept going till now, because it is an accomplishment to have all of that knowledge organized in such a manner. And that's where Substack, I think, is an interesting, not digression, but a tangent for us to take. Because like Facebook, it is a bit of a puzzle. On the one hand, what it offers is discovery. So it does allow you to connect to new readers. It does allow you to promote your writing and get your writing out to a new audience. And that, to me, is very appealing. I first used Substack kind of right before and in the early parts of the pandemic. I did a daily Substack for, I think, just shy of 2 years, perhaps.
Really?
Yeah. And I, to my earlier point about the squirrels, I deleted it all. I just wiped it out. Yeah. And it was because I wrote a lot about the pandemic. I wrote about COVID. I was translating the kind of medical knowledge. And then at a certain point, I just decided that we had lost. That shout out to Biden giving a pardon to Dr. Fauci, because I suspect had he not given that pardon to Dr. Fauci, his life would be kind of difficult right now. I just felt, I kind of sensed what's happening now, and I decided I didn't want to be on the wrong side of history. There were better people than me who were cataloging that information, and I was content to, as someone who has 25 years, 30 years of internet history, to brush that aside. And it was at the time when the Nazis were starting to become part of Substack. And Substack was going through this really interesting governance issue that everyone was about 2 years ago, which is, should we have Nazis on our platform? And Substack said yes. And that's where I said, okay, well, fuck you, Substack. I'm gone. And I went to a platform called Beehive, and it's Beehive with 2 I's. So Beehiiv. And I do encourage you as a writer to check it out.
Okay.
Beehive does not offer the same kind of discovery as Substack, but it's far more focused on writers like yourself, who fundamentally want to bring people back to their website or back to their blog or back to a digital property they own. Versus Substack really wants to be a walled garden, right? They really kind of make it hard to get your content, to get your readers. They're now hosting podcasts and videos, but again, they want to keep everyone within Substack. They use all of...
That's the problem with Facebook, right?
Yes, and they are
content
copying
is
them.
no longer your content. If you write stuff on Facebook, it just goes down your feed and never to be found again. You can't find it. You can't search it.
Substack's a little better that way, and they do allow you to export. So you can, for example, constantly export it and import it into WordPress or import it into some other standalone. But the
Yeah.
design of Substack is very much like Facebook. They want to keep you within that walled garden. Now, I'm back on Substack as of December because you can't, like, the Nazis are everywhere. I can't say, oh, I can't use that because the Nazis are using it. And similarly, the discovery aspect of Substack. Yeah, right, as Elon Musk demonstrated. So I don't know if I've answered your question. Feel free to ask any follow-up, but it'll be a struggle for you to get the audience and the attention you get on Substack off of Substack. That's certainly what I'm struggling with at the moment.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of the same with Facebook. Ultimately, I think it's better to have your own contact list.
Yes.
Which is what I used to have. And I think that if and when I decide to move completely from Facebook back to my blog, like to stop so I have a number of Facebook pages at the minute. I have my own personal page, and then I have my Amazing Susan page, which is mostly devoted to motorcycling. So, and my blog isn't motorcycling. There's opinion and, other stuff there. But I think I'm going to ask my audience on Facebook to subscribe to my blog and then just stop doing Facebook because I'm tired. Why do I want to get my post taken off as spam?
Yeah.
And that's ridiculous.
It's insulting, quite frankly.
Yeah. And also I had 7 Twitter accounts. I haven't been active on Twitter for quite some time now, but and 2 of my accounts, the one for Amazing Women Rock, and I have another site called She Quotes, also has hundreds of pages on it. All memes. I was doing memes before anyone else ever thought to
Right on.
Anyway,
have you looked at Blue Sky?
I'm going to.
Yeah.
Because I went to log into Facebook the other day. So 2 of my accounts were stolen. Amazing Women Rock, they were hacked. They were stolen.
Your Facebook accounts, you mean? Or your Twitter accounts?
No, Twitter accounts. Amazing Women Rock and She Quotes were both stolen. And so I sent a complaint to Twitter. This was 5 or 6 months ago, and got no reply. And then a couple of days ago, I wanted to see if Mark Carney's, I had seen a screenshot saying that Mark Carney's account had been suspended on Twitter. So I wanted to check it out. I always check stuff first before I post anything. But I couldn't log in. And not only that, but all my accounts were listed. I had 7 or 8 Twitter accounts. They're all listed down the side. And it's telling me, put in your email address, put in your password. And I have a system that I use for the passwords. And so I'm putting the passwords in. Every time it told me that the email address is invalid, the password address is invalid. And then it says, give us we'll email you a link. And then they email the link and you hit the link and no, it's not. I mean, it was just a nightmare.
Yeah. And that's why I'm calling it X now, because they don't deserve the legacy name of Twitter. It has become such a monster. And to your point, in December, when I sort of said, our political moment demands activity. It demands, media participation, media creation. Yeah. So I started playing with X again after ignoring it. And it's been a waste of time. And I say this in the sense that it's clearly a pay-to-play platform. That if you don't pay for the blue check and the monthly thing, your content will be actively suppressed. You're not going to reach your quote-unquote audience. You're not going to reach your followers. There's absolutely no point in posting. And right up until this week, I was still just throwing stuff out there just, to see what it gets. And today I was kind of like, you know what? No. I'm not going to bother. It's not worth my time at all.
No.
Right?
Yeah. So, and the problem is that lots of people, that's where their community is. You know, you talked about community with John, and and especially during COVID, like that was I'm here alone in my house. You couldn't go anywhere. That Facebook kind of kept me sane, you know,
Yeah.
being connected with people through online kept me sane.
Well, and
And
let's use that actually as an opportunity, not changing subjects at all, but remembering that I have a structure to this show, and we've
right,
been talking about the future all that time. But let us segue into our feature conversation, because I want to talk about Facebook, and I want to talk about it in the context of our local community. You know,
yes,
to everyone who doesn't live in our community, I call it El Monte. And I
yes,
love the Spanish pronunciation, but of course it's Almont here locally. And you and I, because our grandfathers were not born here,
yes,
you and I fundamentally are newcomers, no matter how long we've actually lived here.
yeah.
And what I think a lot of people in cities don't understand is how powerful the Facebook local group in small communities has become. And many analysts often point out that the reason Facebook continues to survive today is because of the anchor that they have in a lot of North American small communities. Because the Facebook group is such a touch point, and not even of like-minded people, often quite the opposite.
Oh my God.
So I'm curious, both in the context of the pandemic, because it was a really interesting touch point for our physical community who were using the local Facebook community as a way to disagree, to articulate, to connect, in addition to the more sane groups that we belong to that could provide more of that social contact.
Which are those, Jesse?
Fair enough. I was being aspirational.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the evolving nature of the Facebook local.
Well, you know, we had that page, Friends in Mississippi Mill, Friends of Mississippi Mills.
Which was kind of the
And
original.
that was the original one. And then the creator of that page finally, I don't know how long ago it was now, 8 months, maybe
Seems about right.
9 months, gave just shut the page down because he was tired.
I have to imagine he caught a lot of flack.
A lot of flack.
From everybody, like not just
From
people from one
everybody.
side of the spectrum or the other.
No.
But that's power.
Yeah.
You know, those in power get a lot of heat.
Yeah, but it's tiresome.
Yes, it is.
And it's tiresome for the users as well. Coincidentally, shall I read you a little poem I wrote exactly
Please.
about that?
Please.
Okay, so this is called The Lowest Common Denominator. It's about threads, not threads, the new threads. It's about, you know, how things go in a thread. One asks a question, the other replies with insults and slander that are hard on my eyes. You answer just like I've come to expect. No doubt you are playing with just half a deck. You moron, you fool, the first one shoots back. There's no proof of your truth and your brain's got a crack. The other can't let that statement stand, so he types out a comment, a terse reprimand. How dare you accuse me, you nitwit, you hack. When it's clear as a crystal, you're the one with the lack. Back and forth and back, round in circles they go, as down sinks the thread till it's lower than low.
That was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And a very astute expression or observation of the culture that exists in these groups. But I'm curious. I feel, to bring us back to the quitting social media, I kind of feel that the original friends of and the new kind of friends in, I do actually monitor some of the right wing splinter groups that claim to offer the unfiltered version. honestly, that has kept me on Facebook. There were parts of the pandemic where, and I agree, like the digital community side, I was finding elsewhere. I mean, I was finding it on Twitch and Discord and all sorts of other media.
Yeah, yeah.
But I feel even today that I can't quit Facebook because there's a lot of gossip, innuendo, nonsense, but also local intelligence that flows through that group.
There is. Like you can put a post on there that says looking for whatever, and people will answer you. And it's like way faster than having to shop around, and you get recommendations, you get a direct line to whoever it is that you need or want, or whatever it is that you need or want. And then there's events and all of that stuff.
And
yeah, it's important.
and I'm curious your kind of strategy because you engage at a level that I quite frankly don't have the courage. I will troll. I'll sometimes ask people, especially some of the real wingnuts. I'll ask them sincere questions to try to get them to unpack the logic they clearly don't have.
Right.
Versus you engage much more earnestly, and I think there's a lot of community members who appreciate it, right? Who are looking for that common sense amidst some of the nonsense. But I'm curious, are you doing it spontaneously as a writer? Are you doing it, out of a sense of community responsibility? Do you have fun doing it? Because clearly there's some stress that comes with it as well.
Well, in answer to those questions, I would say yes. Well, I've been in a few circumstances where I've gotten into very heated discussions. I wouldn't even call them discussions, more like the poem I've just read.
Yes.
And then I said to myself, why am I doing this? There's no point. And I think people need to be civil. We've lost civility. We've lost reasonable discourse. There's no logic out there. People leap in with whatever TikTok garbage that they've assimilated, and a lot of it makes no sense. So I just try and be chill.
Yeah. It's almost an attempt at a meditative exercise with the ultimate incendiary distraction there in front of you.
Yes, you have a way with words.
Well, okay. So speaking of which, then, allow me to throw a curveball at you. And this is a curveball which I haven't really had the opportunity to throw at people, partly because I don't think that they've had your anthropological experience in Facebook groups. And I say this because I find there's two types of people. There's the people who avoid it entirely. They're just like, there's no way I'm going to wade into that. And then there's the folks who have been driven insane by the nature of these groups. You are a rare individual who has been in the social media weeds for pretty much its entire history. Yeah. And you still have common sense and what appears to be sanity, although we'll get to the dementia shortly. What if I were to pose to you the abstract but metaphorically accurate argument that our parliament is now on Facebook, that our town council, from a participatory perspective, is Friends in Mississippi Mills. And while Friends in Mississippi Mills does not have the electoral power to set our council and mayor, it sure seems to be where town debates happen. And while you are someone who has taken the effort to go to town council and take notes and share those notes in the previous Facebook group, what do you think of my... Sorry, go ahead.
You know what happened? After COVID, the council meetings were held online. They were streamed. And then when COVID was over, I went back to the council meetings, and I went to one, and I started to do what I had done before, which was to follow along the council meeting and put the updates in the feed on the Facebook page. Excuse me, but what happened after COVID, Facebook, as we talked about earlier, changed so that the updates didn't appear
buried
sequentially. Yeah, there would be one, and then they would post another one until like the next day, and so that was the end of that.
Yeah. But again, indulge me in this metaphor.
Okay.
To what extent, and I'll reframe it in even more incendiary language, given our discussion today. To what extent is Facebook taking over the democratic franchise? To what extent is the decisions made in a community no longer happening in the town council, but happening in the Facebook group, which does not have democratic mechanisms to, Tracy, the original owner, moderator of Friends of Mississippi Mills, he was never elected. And I think that's why he quit, because, he had all the stress, none of the power, none of the benefits.
Yeah.
Indulge me in this. Do you think my metaphor is there? Do you see a parallel, or do you think I'm smoking way too much cannabis?
Yes.
They're not mutually exclusive. I will acknowledge that.
I think that I think social media has an inordinate power over the political process, and that power is increasing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at, who was standing up there with Trump, right?
Given the Nazi salute, right? And to your point at the inauguration, all the heads of social media instead of governors and elected officials.
Yeah. And so that is going to quiet the voice, I think. People will become more afraid. And, already you post something that, I don't know, I've been kicked off. I've been, put in Facebook jail at least a dozen times. And I've had posts removed. It's getting worse.
Yeah. Although the current moderator, he does seem to welcome politics the way that in Friends of rather than Friends in, Friends of, they didn't want any controversy, any debates. But now it seems like there is more opportunity for debates and for political disagreement, albeit it's still kind of uncivil.
Yeah, but Facebook can just, in a group, sometimes Facebook takes down the posts.
Yes.
It's not the moderators that take down the posts. It's Facebook, it's whatever algorithm.
The automatic mechanisms.
Whatever is automatic. Yeah, they look at they read the page, or they read the picture, whatever they do, and then bang, it's gone, and then you have no recourse.
Yeah. And maybe, I wonder if that'll change now that Zuckerberg has embraced this kind of libertarian ethos of, but what that entails, because your point is it's all automatic, so we don't know what the logic is.
No, we don't know what the logic is. Like, sometimes I wonder why my posts have been taken off, but you can't question. There's no questioning.
Yeah.
You can't question. There's no person there. It's just AI.
Yeah, well, not even AI, because AI suggests it's intelligent, and that's why in this case I use the word automatic, because it makes mistakes so pervasively. Speaking of which, I do want to talk about dementia, because I feel it is both appropriate in the context of social media as well as appropriate in the context of contemporary politics. But before we go there, allow me, still on this subject of kind of local democracy and local social media. While I wasn't born there, I spent most of my formative life in Toronto. And certainly my political outlook was heavily shaped by my life in Toronto. And therefore my concept of politicians and municipal politics really reflects Rob Ford Toronto.
Oh my goodness.
As absurd as that might be, I'm curious what your thoughts of our local politicians. and our local politics, partly because you have taken the time to hang out at town council, and because you are the kind of curious person who pays attention to these things, I think more so than our other neighbors. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on both the people who comprise our local politicians, but the culture of local politics here.
Well, I think it's improved since the last council. And I think that our mayor, Krista Lowry, is absolutely fabulous.
She certainly developed a profile, provincially amongst other mayors.
Yeah, she just won an award. I can't remember what it is now. It's something
like distinguished service,
Yeah, something like that at the
Rural Ontario Municipal Association Conference.
How clever are you?
It's one of my, and I'm getting to this in a bit. One of my ambitions in life would to be a speaker at Roma. I would love the power and privilege of addressing all those rural mayors. So I pay attention to these circuits. But you were saying, yes, our mayor,
the mayor is fabulous, and I think the councillors are also fabulous. I mean, it's not an easy job, and I think I have another poem about that. Maybe we don't have time. I don't know.
No, you take a moment to find the poem, and I'll share a quick anecdote. I live in Ramsey, the Ramsey ward, and the councillor who was defeated in the last municipal election was an anti-vaxxer, right? And a full out kind of COVID conspiracist. So I'm glad that she was defeated. I really, her and Randy Hillier brought a lot of shame to me politically, that they were my elected representatives. So I'm glad that they were defeated. But as you look for this poem, I bring this up because, Susan, you're exactly the kind of person I would love to have on town council. Because while you are correct that our mayor, from a policy perspective, is quite competent, I don't feel we have anyone in the town council who is media savvy, right? Who understands how to communicate in a manner that counters the conspiracists, that counters the kind of far right who do have an anchor in our community. And, our mayor does great work, but she's the kind of person who thinks that the great work should speak for itself. She is also fortunate to be part of the families who are the legacy of this community, and that's a boost. But I would love to see someone like yourself run for council, partly because we need better communicators in our public office. Speaking of which, you got that poem queued up?
Yeah, I do.
Please.
Well, thanks for that vote of confidence, but I think not.
Yes.
So this is called Rebuttal. And I wrote this in response to complaints. Everybody complains about everything all the time. I'm glad I live in Almont. There's so much here to do. It doesn't matter if you're old or totally brand new. The town is cute and quaint, you see. It really is terrific. Don't listen to the folks who say, hey, this or that's horrific. We have music, arts and plays, cycling parks and rivers, shops and food and other stuff. Get out there and just give her. Our council works both long and hard. Still, citizens complain. The traffic's bad and I'm so sad, and they should stop the rain. Some folks think it's a right to bitch. They want to have their say. Because of taxes municipal, we all are forced to pay. The flowers suck, the roads are fucked, the whole damn thing's a mess. Get off your butts, do something now. We need a full course press. I prefer to be constructive and volunteer my time, or take a poke at those who whinge with poetry that rhymes. Is every little thing just right and always to my liking? Oh no, it's not. Of course it's not. But that's no cause for striking. I feel so lucky to be here where abundance is on offer. I'm grateful for the things we have, unlike unhappy scoffers. Even if the world were perfect, a bunch would find it faulty. They'd rant and rave from beyond the grave, their hellish voices salty.
Right on. Fantastic. And it is not ironic that you listened to the episode I had with John Wolfstone, because it was like
Yes.
this one. I was able to use my sound effects, which in developing a muscle memory of podcasting, I haven't got to yet. And I do dare you to post this interview once it's published to the
I
Facebook
will.
group
I will.
to see if anyone realizes that we're talking about them and whether they want to react. To which I'd say anyone local is welcome to appear on the podcast and provide a dissenting view or a different perspective on either the role of Facebook in local communities or why the future is rural. But before we conclude this fantastic conversation, I did kind of want to pick your brain, no pun intended, about dementia. And
Yes.
I say this partly because, cognitive decline is something that I've been kind of conscious of my entire life because of my parents' work. My dad is a geriatrician and has worked
really?
in geriatrics his entire life. But I also feel that we, especially given the current president of the United States, we're sort of in a demented society. And I say this in the sense that fascism tries to erase history as part of its use of power. So while we can get into specifics, I'm curious, Susan, as a poet, as a writer, whether you will again indulge me in this metaphor. To what extent do you think dementia is not just an individual cognitive decline, but as something that could be ascribed to our culture and our moment in history?
Oh, well, there's an interesting question. I've never asked myself that before. I think that the new prez down south is, well, the previous one was definitely declining for sure. There's no question about it. You can tell by the look of his face.
We've actually learned that the staff who worked around him in the White House was hiding it for months.
Yeah.
That they were going out of their way to really cover up and make it secret. It was an open secret in the White House.
Yeah.
And it very much hurt Kamala Harris's chances.
Yeah. Yeah, he should have resigned way before. But anyway, again, same pattern. And the new guy, in my opinion, has a cluster B personality disorder. He's a combination of narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder, which is sometimes called psychopathy or sociopathy. And he's a mixed bag of that. And I guess you could say, and he's probably getting mild cognitive decline now, from what I see, my observation. And to your point, it can be a little bit contagious not in a physical sense, but in a mental sense. People kind of go, it's a cult.
And we're seeing that in our Facebook group, right? We're seeing, you earlier used the word nonsense, and I've been sort of framing logic, that there's a certain dementia to these arguments, not necessarily to the individuals presenting them. And that's why I say it on a cultural level.
Yeah.
It feels that there is a complete disconnect. That I think as a society, it's hard for us to wrap our heads around because we're used to political discourse being rational and reasonable. And to your point, the cult seems to be having their own internal meaning, their own internal logic, which seems to depend upon a certain break from reality.
Well, interestingly, that brings us kind of full circle back to social media, doesn't it? Because and AI comes into it as well. I think wasn't I at some thing that you did? Was that about AI?
Yeah.
Was that about AI? Yeah. So, because you can't tell anymore fact from fiction. Like I try to be as thorough as possible in somebody posts something, I go and try and find the source so that I know if it's it's either, real or semi-real,
Mm-hmm.
or if it's just complete garbage. Like there was, I don't know if you saw the limo thing about when Mark Carney did his announcement in Edmonton. And so there was a picture of this limo pulling up. Look at Carney, what's he doing? Well, it turns out it was a complete setup.
Yeah.
Somebody ordered the limo there to pick somebody up.
Yeah. I mean, we're at a level of dirty tactics in which, to your
That's,
point about AI,
yeah.
and actually, I did. It's a terrible habit. I'm trying to break it. I did open X today, and all the ads were like fake news about Jagmeet Singh, fake news about Carney, fake news about other politicians. So, and you, when you say that you look up stuff, when you say that you vet the information that's there, that is obviously a reflection of your literacy, right? And as a writer, you have an advanced level of literacy because you're practicing your craft pretty much your entire life. Unfortunately, that literacy is not as widespread as we need it, right?
No.
And people are not putting that effort in to verify the information they get, which isn't hard. Like, in the world we live in, it's actually quite easy to verify the accuracy of the stuff you get. It takes effort, but not a lot.
No. And yeah, and perhaps that contributes to a dementia-like condition, a decline of the community brain, if you will, or the social brain, the part that's meant to be leading in the thinking process. There's no thinking process happening anymore. It's just absent, which is kind of what happens with cognitive decline, isn't it?
Well,
So
go ahead.
So I don't think your metaphor or is off. Let me put it that way. I think an argument could be made for that.
Well, and your point about no thought is really my position on AI, that artificial intelligence is a very powerful tool, but it does not think. It requires the thinking to be done by the user. And unfortunately, not everyone understands that. So they're not really making the most of AI. And as part of this podcast, I'm interviewing, lots of AI people just to pick their brains, but also to try to poke holes in some of their arguments. Because a lot of the future of work stuff is all about how AI is going to take our jobs, to which I'm always kind of rebutting, well, what about elder care? And what about the larger care industry? Like, this is something that I think, even though we grossly undervalue it in our society, ludicrously so, but that elder care and care labor in general is something that the demand is going to continue to grow rapidly. And unfortunately, the supply is not there. But this is where I kind of want you to be a little political, maybe even a little aspirational. What would it take to change that? Right? If we are an aging society, if part of aging is cognitive decline, what do we have to do to rectify, if not completely transform, our understanding of elder care, our understanding of care labor in general, so that as you and I continue to age, as we do start to see the signs of cognitive decline, we have some hope that we will be able to live in a society where community, to go back to John Wolfstone's point, is something that we can see, that we can look forward to, rather than the current situation where, we have reason to be concerned.
Oh, big reason to be concerned. There are a bunch of problems, and looking at the cause, I don't know, 150, 200 years ago, our life expectancy was 40.
Yeah.
And now it's 70, 80. We're not, and everything hasn't caught up. The nursing home, the history of the nursing home is comes from poorhouses. That's the history, or that's like way back when. But and there's not enough people, I've got a diagram. I'll send it to you. I did the causes of um, the breakdown of elder care, and it hasn't changed much. There's, staffing. There's not enough staff. The staff isn't trained properly. There's not enough funding. There's the profit side. People want to make money. That doesn't really work. Yeah, they make money.
Yeah. But the care is not there.
The care sucks.
Yeah.
There's the understanding of what is required to properly care for elderly people. And then there's the desire on behalf of society people who are old are seen often as disposable. So it's really complicated. It's just not one thing. It's this whole web of stuff, as is usually everything, right? You can't just pick out, oh, this is the thing that we need to fix and it's all going to be okay. It's not like that. It's multifaceted. And then there's MAID.
Which is a whole other issue. And for our non-Canadian, non-listener, MAID stands for medically assisted intentional death. Is that?
No, it's medical assistance in dying.
Medical assistance in dying. But it's an option for people who are experiencing disability, people who are having a difficult time aging, as kind of a way to choose death as an option. But from a policy perspective, it's still very problematic. Sorry, go ahead.
You have to death should be imminent within 6 months or something like that. I think the rule is now, and they're trying to change it to, and the problem with dementia, of course, is that once you're at that point, then you don't have the capacity to make that decision. And so they're trying to change it so that people can decide in advance.
Yes. The whole notion of the living will, which, for anyone listening right now, you might think, well, I don't have any assets. I don't need a will. You've got a brain. And that's kind of the role of a living will.
Yeah.
So, ironically, we should have you back to talk about this subject in particular, because where I think we had a lot of fun unpacking and playing with social media, I think this is worthy of its own episode, right? Because there are a lot of threads for us to pull, especially from a MetaView's angle, both on the future, right, and anticipating the future, but also on the policy sides to this. There are a few things that you sort of said there that, I also kind of at some point want to unpack. One is the whole healthcare and staffing, because one of the other recurring threads in our local Facebook group is there are clearly staff of our local hospital system who are unhappy with management, and they keep posting comments that are alluding to this. And I keep, as a recovering journalist, I keep wanting to pull those threads and be like, oh, really? What's going on here? What's happening? In the same way that we are an aging community. And so I think, this conversation we're having now about elder care, about whether people who are aging are discarded in a society, or to, I suspect, our own mutual ambition, quite the opposite, that we return to a society where us elders are revered for our wisdom and everyone wants to listen to our podcasts and read our blogs. Again, aspirational, but good aspirational. Yes. I'm curious, though, to kind of wrap this conversation up. Do you feel that there is an intersection here between what we've been describing at the end here in elder care and where we started in terms of social media? Because, without disclosing our age, you and I are already past what used to be the life expectancy that you cited.
Well past.
But intellectually, we're both clearly still engaged. Right. And, like a fine wine, I think a brain can really become stronger and more valuable with age. So to what extent do you see social media as that kind of aging strategy, as a counter to potential cognitive decline? Because if we're having our gray matter continue to connect and flare and do interesting things, that's got to be a positive, no?
Well, for me, I don't know. For me, what I've noticed is that social media, the volume of information that I am exposed to and trying to manage every day is getting to be beyond my capacity. And that's causing me to be anxious because I think I can't handle it like I used to be able to. But on the other hand, there's way more information than there was before.
There's a certain relativity here, I think, worth
Yeah.
keeping in mind.
Yeah. And so, I don't know. I think we'd probably be better off going out in nature for walks than being online
I
for
agree.
hours and hours and hours. I mean, you're out there in the country in the snow and the dogs and all of that stuff. Good for you. I think
Although,
that's healthier.
to your point, it's still, even though I have all of this literally as my backyard, sometimes I'll fall into
Here
a
we
TikTok
are.
hole, right? Yes. But to your point, to bring this kind of to a close, this is why I recommitted to podcasting, because I kind of felt that it still gives me the desire for media. It gives me the desire to connect with my world, but it's more conversational. Right? Like in you and I having this conversation, on some levels, we're recreating social media. We're, emulating some of the dopamine hits from having good ideas and, connecting on different levels. But it feels more human to me in terms of the dialogue and the conversation. So that's part of why I'm currently trying to commit my
Rather
my
than
screen time. Well, I'm doing both though, right? Because I do feel that writing exercises a part of our mind that's different than oral, that's different than dialogue. So I'm trying to do both, but I'm trying to do both more as I am the creator, I am the producer. I'm still consuming podcasts. Like the thing about farming is, podcasts and farming go hand in hand, because when you're out there, mucking a stall or moving hay or, bringing the goats to the back, I can have be listening. I can have that kind of combination of physical activity and intellectual stimulation. But this is why I'm really enthusiastic about podcasting, and I'm kind of enthusiastic about Substack, as problematic as it may be, because it allows me to do both. It allows me to kind of engage the world, play with media, but have more intention, have more mindfulness to it, and still spend as much time outside, with my animals and breathing fresh air and hanging out with the
But
trees.
that's a bit ironic, Jesse, to say you're being mindful when you're doing mucking out the stall with your podcast on.
But
I mean,
that's the paradox.
That's not mindfulness.
But it is. It's meta mindfulness here on Meta Views, because I agree. It is. And this is where my kind of autistic ADHD mind requires a certain level of stimulation. But it's why computer programmers say that they have their best thinking in the shower, right? Because they, on the one hand, have to get away from the screen, but on the other hand, the shower, the water on their body is giving them a physical stimulation that allows for the mental. So I think it's complicated. And maybe that's where we will have you back for the cognition episode, where we don't just talk about aging, but we talk about how brains work.
Some very strong ideas about dementia.
Right on. Right on.
That are not kind of mainstream.
Good. Then this is the place to air them here on MetaViews. Now, we end every episode by asking our guest to give some shout outs. And we partly do this because, the internet is all about links. It's all about kind of connecting people. And, if just like we started with news in the future, is there anyone that you're reading? Is there anyone that, you've been thinking about that you want our audience to know? It's kind of on the spirit of we stand on the shoulders of giants, right? They're, as human beings, we are iterating the art and culture that is inspired before us. So is there any person or two people, Susan, that you think our audience should know?
I've been thinking about that since yesterday. And I don't want to single anyone out. I really, I would like to shout out to the Canadian people and how they're responding to a multitude of challenges, and mostly with grace. I think mostly with, we're stalwart, and I think that's important. I think we should not bend.
Right on.
And I really feel that people are kind of embracing that position, and so good on us. So good on Canada.
Right on.
Yeah.
And to your point, I think Canadians have always struggled with what it means to be Canadian. And I think we're going to get a real opportunity to have a deep think about that. Because, of course, it's not just a federal election, which I tend to love elections because they are opportunities for us to have these big questions. But I think we're going to have an Ontario election too. So it's,
Yeah.
a double whammy, double peril, double opportunity to have these big discussions. So again, more reason to have you back on the show. Thank you very much, Susan.
You're so much fun.
Well, and as a poet, we need to have more poetry on MetaView. So thank you again for that. And I do encourage you to post this interview. I'll email it to you to post it on our local Facebook group, because maybe we will provoke more local conversation about these particular issues. Susan can be found at amazingwomenrock.com. Even the website, you're saying, is not as active as it used to be.
It's
Fair
not
enough.
as active as it used to be. But
Then,
you can go to amazingsusan.com.
Okay, amazingsusan.com is the hub. Go ahead.
And for people who are in contact with people who live with dementia or care partners, myalzheimersstory.com.
Right on. myalzheimersstory.com. And I suspect when we have Susan back, she will either have a Substack or potentially a Blue Sky. So it will be like a sequel of, Amazing Susan reiterating on social media or abstaining from it entirely. It's like a cliffhanger. Tune in and find out. But of course, MetaViews is still available on most socials where you can find us. This has been another fantastic episode. I tell you, Susan, we're on a hot streak, which makes me feel that I'm going to have some terrible episodes coming up. But we will continue to try nonetheless. For those tuning in, thank you, and we'll see you soon.